Hello world and welcome to this video. So this video is going to be a follow-up to my previous video where I discussed or asked the question, does modular synth have an image problem? And I think it was really quite interesting because a lot of people commented on that video, so thank you if you did comment. And yeah, some really interesting ideas and opinions that came from that. So if you did watch that video and you commented, thank you very much for getting involved. If you've not watched that video yet, then there'll probably be a link up here somewhere right about now. And I suggest just go and have a quick look at that. I think it's safe to say that the overwhelming view from people are that there are sort of two elements to this idea of modular synth having an image problem, and that is the expense of it, and that in itself is related to gas and the whole gear acquisition thing, and then also the kind of like the bleep bloop thing, and whether modular synth is actually useful at all for making any kind of real music. So I kind of wanted to focus in a little bit more on those 2 points in today's video, and maybe offer some kind of solutions to that. Ultimately, though, I think all of this comes down to education. That's probably the most important thing. Education for people who are getting into modular synth to start off with, but maybe also sort of education, not necessarily education, but for people who are, members of the public, to have more of an awareness of what modular synth is and how it's being used. One of the points that came up in the comments that somebody mentioned, and I can't remember now who it was, apologies, was that actually there are a lot of artists that use modular synth, quite well-known artists, in fact, and we're just not aware that those people are using modular synth in their music. I myself sort of noticed this as well, that after I got into modular, I started seeing modular in more places. So I can remember, a couple of years ago watching Glastonbury live on TV, and there were lots of modular rigs on stage. They might not have been doing an awful lot, but they were part of a band and they were being used by some quite big name acts. And I thought, well, is it a case that modular is sort of getting a little bit more popular now, or is it that the fact that it was always there, but I never noticed it because I didn't know what it was? And it could be both. I think there is a word to describe that, isn't there? When you get into, or you get something and then you start seeing that everywhere. You buy a blue car and then you've seen blue cars all over the place that you never noticed before. There is a word for that, and I'm not sure what it is. And maybe that's the case with modular. So that's why I'm started seeing modular being used more and more, because I'm now aware of what it is and I'm seeing it, whereas prior to that I probably didn't have an awareness of it. So that's an interesting thing, that I think that modular is more prevalent than we realise, and the people who are using it to make actual music are not necessarily the people who are promoting modular or talking about it online or whatever. They're just using it as a tool, like many other things that they probably have in their access to in their studios. They don't necessarily consider themselves modular artists. It's just another tool in their studio. So that's quite an interesting thing, perhaps, that actually modular is more common than we think. We just we're not always aware of it. For myself, I think, and I've spoken about this before, modular synth for me really helped to kind of unlock a level of creativity that I had not experienced before. And yeah, music sort of felt a little bit easier. Writing my own music felt a little bit easier once I had access to modular, and once I started using it and started exploring sounds and what you can do with the modular. Another point that came up in the comments was that we don't really have, in the world of modular, we don't really have sort of household names that you can say, oh, this person is like the equivalent of like a guitar hero. Maybe off the top of my head, Colin Benders comes to mind as somebody who is a force within the world of modular synth. But even Colin Benders is not going to be like a recognizable name to somebody if you stop them on the street and say, oh, do you know any famous modular synth artists? There are, a lot of people out there that are using modular to create some amazing music and, pushing the boundaries, being really creative and so on. In a couple of weeks' time, I'm going to see Lola York at a concert. She's playing locally to me, and that is somebody who I've found really inspirational. I think she creates some amazing music, and what she does is really interesting. Especially recently, I don't know if any of you follow her, but she started doing these monthly. I can't remember what she calls them now, but it's sort of like a blending of field recording and modular synth music, and it's really interesting. But again, she's not necessarily sort of a mainstream artist, and unless you're in that modular synth world, you probably not have heard of her before. Caitlin Aurelia Smith is another person who is somebody that I've followed and found her work really interesting. I think her more recent album is sort of breaking into the mainstream a little bit more, perhaps. But again, somebody who is using modular in a really creative way, but we're not necessarily seeing them all over the place, all over YouTube. Another particular YouTuber that I follow is the channel is RP Gould. Robin, I can't remember his last name, Gould. So he's a filmmaker, and he does these amazing videos, which are, again, really creative, and a lot of sort of ambient kind of sort of drone sort of work with his modular. But everything he does, whenever he releases a video, I will always watch it because I'm always excited to hear his music and also see his videos. So that's kind of, that's to say that there are people out there, and I'm sure, people who are watching this video, you will have countless lists of your favorite modular artists that you can put in the comments. But there are a lot of people out there that are making really amazing music. We just don't see them every day, and you have to go hunting for them. And that in itself maybe is a little bit of a problem, and partly, one of the things that contributes to this image problem. The other thing that comes up is the whole gas thing and the idea that modular is expensive, and you need to have this sort of massive modular rack in order to create any music or have any chance of creating any music. And this is kind of fueled by the whole sort of YouTube gear culture. And again, this comes up in the comments from the last video, that if you want to get on with YouTube and you want to get lots of views, then that doing gear reviews, getting involved in that sort of gear industry is the way that you get views. And so that kind of skews the content, the modular synth content on YouTube, to be, the majority being gear related videos. And it fuels people's gas, and it gives this impression that modular is all about the gear. And it's not really that true, but that's the effect of the algorithm and YouTube and the way that YouTube works. And again, this is not specific to just to modular, but other niches as well. I'm sure whatever sort of hobby anyone is into, reviews and the gear videos for that hobby will be the majority of videos that people watch. Because if you want to buy something or you want to learn about something, YouTube's the first place that you go to. Again, there aren't that many videos, or if there are, they don't seem to do so well, and I've talked about this in another video as well, but there aren't that many videos of people actually making music. The majority of videos are gear videos. So what? How can we combat this? Well, I think, one of the ways is for, if you are somebody who makes music and you are, you're doing jams with your modular, or you're creating albums or songs or whatever, maybe getting them out and getting them on YouTube is the way forward. And as more and more people do this over time, maybe it will sort of rebalance a little bit. It's interesting because I saw a video just the other day by Rhett Shull, which if you're a guitar player, you'll probably know who Rhett Shull is. But he is a guitarist, and he does a lot of videos. Again, it's sort of like guitar tech review videos. But he was saying how he was feeling the need to have more music content on YouTube, and he hopes himself to put more music content on his channel. But he knows that those videos won't necessarily get the views that the tech review videos get. And this all sort of feeds into this thing, doesn't it? That it's all about the gear, and music is secondary to that. So I think I kind of talked a little bit about that in the previous video. So I guess if we want to sort of try and combat this idea that modular synth has this sort of bad image, it has to come from a place of actually sharing more music. So maybe that's a sort of call to action to people. If you are somebody out there and you're wanting to, or you're creating music, then let's hear it. Let's get it onto YouTube. I noticed that myself, since I started doing these talking videos, I haven't actually made a video where I'm making any music, and that's been the case for probably a couple of months now. And so I've got to try and make an effort to actually make some more music videos, because that's how I kind of started this channel, and it would be a shame if I lost that just for the sake of talking to the camera in order to get views. So that's something that I need to do myself. I'm still making music, I'm just not recording it and putting it on YouTube. So that's something myself there that I need to do. The other aspect to it then is kind of like the bleep bloop thing, and people having this impression that modular is not really for making real music. And I think there's two aspects to that. One is that there are a lot of people who enjoy tinkering with modular, but don't necessarily know or don't necessarily want to actually take it a step further and create complete pieces of music. Maybe they're just happy tinkering, and that's fine. Or maybe they're not sure how to go about making music. So that's something that can be addressed through education again, and maybe helping with people. And hopefully I can do that as well a little bit with this channel. The other aspect of it, of course, is that modular synth, the music made by modular synth artists, is really, it is how should we say it? It's kind of an evolution, or the offspring of experimental electronic music or experimental electroacoustic music. And if we go back to sort of the early days of electronic music and experimental music, music concrete and so on, we can listen to music which is actually, it's not a million miles away from the sort of the bleep bloop music that we get in modular. It's difficult to listen to, and you almost sort of need a certain level of listening education in order to understand what's going on and to appreciate it. And really, modular synth is an evolution of this movement, this musical, experimental, academic, art music, whatever you want to call it, that we now have today. And so there is this element of modular synth music which is very experimental and is kind of pushing the boundaries of what music can be. But it is still music, even though at first listen it might seem like I don't know, just a bunch of noise, and it's meaningless. But there will be structure in there, and there will be processes going on, and so on. And again, that perhaps comes down to education, and listening to wider varieties of music, and listening to wider artists as well. So yeah, so I think those are two aspects. So one is the sort of education of listening to wider, more experimental types of music and being able to understand what's happening within that, and the other is maybe for people who are interested in creating music and creating complete pieces of music, but don't necessarily know how to go about doing that. Then that again is a form of education that people need. Hopefully that's something that I can help with on this channel. So perhaps before I finish this video, I might just offer a few ideas and tips about how I will go about creating music with Modular. And if you find that interesting, let me know in the comments, and it's something that I can make some more videos on at a later date perhaps. And of course, if you are somebody who is creating music out there, what is your approach? How do you go about it? So yeah, for myself, I will always start out with a particular voice. I usually have an idea of a voice that I want to create, and that idea might have come from reading something, or seeing another video, or listening to something, or maybe even something that isn't even related to synth or electronic music. Now, what I also will do is I will usually have some form of limitation or constraint that I'm applying in that initial step. So I might say, right, for this initial voice, I'm only going to use like one or two modules, or I'm going to use a very specific module, and that's going to be the heart of this voice. Or I'm not going to do this, or I'm going to use a particular scale, or I'm going to use a particular type of sequence, or whatever it may be. But I've given myself some kind of limitation to start me off. This is quite important, I think, because limitation and constraint can kind of feed our creativity. There is a tendency with Modular to think that it's limitless because you can patch anything anywhere, and whatever. Especially if you're working in VCV and you've got a gazillion modules to choose from, it seems limitless. But actually, it's not really, and there is a certain amount of constraint there that's already sort of embedded into the Modular. But I try to sort of hone that a little bit. So I always will start off with one voice, and from that point I will then start listening to the music, or listening to that voice, and trying to hear where other parts are going to come in, whether it might need a bass line, or it might need a drone, or it might need another counter melody or something like that. And I will usually also try and sort of limit the number of voices that I have within a particular patch. I think I might have spoken about this before actually, but I might say, right, I'm going to have, and partly that's due to the fact that my mixer that I have within the rack has 6 channels, albeit 2 of those channels are stereo channels. So I can't have more than 6 voices. Well, I probably could if I thought about it, but quite often I won't use all 6 of those voices. I might just have 3 or 4 of those channels. So I will just kind of experiment and explore and try out different ideas to the point where I will create, I guess, what I would think of as the sort of the peak of the piece of music. Quite often in electronic music, there is a structure that exists where a piece of music is additive. What I mean by that is that you start off with something, a part, and then another part is layered on top, and then another part is layered on top, and then another part, and so on. And then you might have parts that then drop out in a subtractive way. But essentially we have this structure where one part is being layered on top of another. So I will try and create the sort of peak of that first. So I'll have the patch where everything is happening, all the parts are in, and that is, at that point, that's probably where the patch is kind of complete. And then it's a case of how to get to that point from an introduction. So I'll try and work out some kind of introduction, and then experiment with different voices that come in and out, or different parts that layer on top, until I reach that peak point that I've already determined. And then I will try and figure out how I'm going to get to an ending, because the ending is also important. So many times I've created a piece of music and got through it and then thought, right, this needs to end now because it's getting boring, but I don't know how to end it. And I just turn the volume down. So what I try to do now is to actually figure out an ending. So figure out an intro, figure out an ending, figure out the peak of the piece of music, and then just practice transitioning between those points over and over again, until it's ready to record a performance. So at that point I will record the music, or record a piece of music, or make a video, and then I'll edit all that together. So I'm recording the audio separately, edit it all together, and then I will leave that for a few days, just kind of forget about it, and then come back to it, watch the video, listen to the music, and see what I think about it, whether I like it, whether there's something I think needs to change, maybe something needs to happen at a different point, or maybe one of the voices doesn't work, or something else needs to come in, or something needs to be swapped around. And at which point I will then go back to practicing and rehearsing, and then record another performance, and so on, repeating that process until I reach a point where I listen to it and think, oh, actually, yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Now that doesn't always happen very quickly. Sometimes it might be the first time through, the first recording, I'm happy with it. Sometimes it might take 3 or 4 versions before I'm happy with it. And then, as I've spoken about in other videos, I will write all this down. I'm recording it all in my journal, writing out what I'm doing, writing out the times of when things happen and so on. So I've got those notes to refer back to refine the piece of music at a later date. But ultimately, what is important, I think, is not necessarily what's happening in terms of like the patch or the voices or so on, but having some kind of structure and some kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, some kind of like dynamic structure to the piece of music. So it's not just constant sound the whole time, but there are sections where things are building and sections where things are dropping out, where intensity is changing and so on. So that's kind of my approach to making a piece of music, and I don't always follow that rigidly. And if you go back and look through some of my old videos, you'll probably see some pieces which are just a little bit more random or generative, where I just kind of leave the thing going for ages and I'm not actually changing anything. But yeah, so to sum that up, really what I'm trying to do then is create a number of parts, a number of voices, which I can then layer up from an introduction to some kind of peak, and then to an ending, and then putting all that together, rehearsing that, recording it, rehearsing it again, and so on. So that is my approach to sort of how I'm creating a piece of music, rather than, I guess, sort of endlessly tinkering. So I set myself some limitations in terms of the number of voices, or some kind of constraint there, and then sort of experiment. I don't know if that is useful information there. If you do find that useful, perhaps just let me know in the comments, and I can do more videos on this sort of thing, and maybe a little bit more detailed. Obviously that was just a very quick overview there. But I do think this is important to discuss, and I do think this is a way to sort of try and help improve that that sort of bad image that Modular has from time to time, by getting more music out into the world and having more people listen and understand what Modular is about. So yeah, if you have any thoughts on that, if you are putting your own music out on YouTube, then let me know in the comments, as ever. If you've liked this video, then please hit the like button, and if you'd like to see more, hit the subscribe button. I think I am currently at, I don't know, 898 subscribers, so not many to go. 102 subscribers to hit the magic 1000. So hopefully, a couple more videos and I might hit that magic 1000. So yeah, it'd be really good if you can hit the subscribe button. And yeah, so thanks for that. I'll see you in the next video. Cheerio.